Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar presented by the Servant Leadership Institute in Carlsbad, California. I'm Carol Malinski, Manager of Products and Services at SLI, and I'll be hosting today's conversation. Our founder and CEO, Art Barter, is with us this morning to talk about a servant leader's view of difficult conversations. Great to have you here, Art.
Yeah, great to be here, Carol.
Yeah. As you know, SLI is a leadership development organization dedicated to the teaching, the implementation of servant leadership. We believe that servant leadership is to inspire and equip the people we influence. Servant leadership takes that traditional power model of leadership and turns it upside down. In order to fully benefit from today's conversation, we will include an opportunity for you to ask questions toward the end of our time today. Here's how you can submit your questions. As you see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's an area to type in questions. Feel free to ask those questions anytime during the webinar. We will get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A segment at the end of the session. You know, as leaders, we all face challenging situations at work, and sometimes there's a need for a difficult conversation. Today, we want to talk about what sets a servant leader apart from others when a difficult conversation is necessary. Art, we look forward to exploring this topic with you today, as I'm sure you've found yourself in this position many times over the years.
Yeah, hey, Carol. Yeah, we leaders do find themselves in interesting situations. It's great to be back with you. Last month we had to cancel our webinar. We lived through our own unfolding of life events, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Brian, who is one of our staff members, 28 years old, had open heart surgery.
Yes.
And Carol is Brian's mom. And so our staff was very much impacted by the unfolding of this life event. Brian's doing great. He's recovering.
Doing fantastic.
And
yes.
We soon hope to have him back soon. So anyway, great to be back.
Yes.
In the webinar.
Back in the saddle.
After a month off. So yeah, we all have conversations with others at times that we prefer that we didn't have to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
We kind of stay away from them.
Right.
In the behavior of servant leadership, we talk about being courageous, demonstrate courage, and that courage a lot of times has to come through when we have those difficult conversations with individuals
Right.
and where we're headed. So, usually it's a discussion between two or more people who have a different point of view or opinions. We're seeing that play out in a whole lot of environments today, especially with the election going on. People just can't agree.
Yeah.
You imagine if we could have people discuss what's going on in the country without having any emotions behind it. That sometimes there are very, very strong emotions that are present. And most of the time it revolves around being accountable to, not only results, but also our values and how we conduct ourselves, our behaviors. And usually it's a time of reflecting on how we need to change. And
Right.
So those are those tough conversations that we have to have.
Well, the approach to having a difficult conversation is something that's taught by many people and groups in the organizational development world. But we want to talk today about what makes a servant leader's approach different. Do you have any thoughts on that, Art?
I do, and it comes down to motive. How do we enter the conversation, and what is our motive?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, in my experience with power leaders, the motive is to prove that I'm right and you're wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all about proving someone else wrong. In a servant mindset, my approach to those conversations is I want to look at restoring the relationship to what it once was. I want to get back to what it once was. And if you think about a marriage, we all have those challenging conversations at one time, but we said I do at one point in time, and we love each other, and we go, I want to get back to what it once was. And so we do that in business as well. How do we get back to what it once was? You have someone who's been performing well, and now they're not performing well. We need to find out why. Just not say, hey, this is unacceptable and you need to change, but find out what's going on with them as well, which includes some listening. So,
this is illustrated so well, I think, by our friend Cheryl Batchelder, who really talks about how we love the people and how we serve them.
That's right. And Cheryl says we choose to love the people when we serve them well by knowing their strengths, and setting them up for success. And setting them up for success is that motive that you have to go in with.
Yeah.
How do I help people become successful in what they're doing? They have to feel that as well. They have to know that, hey, Art, you're going to have my best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I earn that trust with them because I go in with that mindset. And it isn't just I'm going to harp on people and get them to do what I want them to do. So they have to see a different leader too, and a different approach. And what Cheryl's talking about there is, what's your motive? Your motive
Right.
is love
Right.
and helping, rather than just telling people what to do.
Yeah. And it sounds to me like it would really make a difference if you've built that relationship in advance, and you're going to build that relationship really through behaviors. And so I want to take a minute and go through our servant leadership behaviors and how they can relate to these times when you have to have a difficult conversation.
Okay.
So can you take us through those behaviors?
Sure. The behaviors are 9, and we talk about these all the time.
Yeah.
But if you see the roadmap on the screen, it really is a journey. So we start with serving first, then we go to building trust, then we have to live our values, then we have to spend time listening to understand, then we have to think about what we've heard and think about what we're feeling and thinking about our own motives. Then we have to decide to add value to other people, and how are we going to do that? And once we decide how we're going to add value, then we have to demonstrate courage in doing that.
Yeah.
And how do you actually go out and help people? And then increase your influence, because once people start to trust you, you're gonna have a greater influence
Right.
with people. And then what's important is leaders have to live their own transformation, because we're going through a different mindset transformation as well. Myself going from power leader to a servant leader, that's a transformation I went through and I'm still going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to live my own transformation, just not expect others to live theirs. So those are the 9 behaviors that we teach.
It
Ahead,
just
Carol.
occurred to me that, as you're practicing these behaviors and you are faced with having to have some difficult conversations with people, it seems like you need to have a little time of withdrawal and reflection before you go forward into those difficult conversations. I mean, there's some companies, and I'm sure you've seen this in your career as well, where they avoid those difficult conversations
Mm-hmm.
for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Nobody does anything about this particular behavior.
Mm-hmm.
The servant leader really has to take some time to think about, what's the best approach, rather than just hitting it head on.
Yeah, it's just like your business plan, just like your strategic plans. You put time and thought and research in what you're doing and where you want to go as a company. It's the same thing with dealing with people, especially these difficult conversations, is you need time to sit down and plan out that conversation.
Yeah.
You're going to be surprised during those conversations, because you're going to get reactions that you aren't expecting.
Right.
And I will help everyone understand that most of the time the reaction you will get from people in those conversations has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
All right, it has to do with a lot of the files they bring to the table. So
Right.
don't react to that and emotionally react to it. So you gotta make sure that stays balanced.
Yeah.
But if we get back to the difficult conversations, you really need to build trust. And if people feel they can trust you, and what does that look like in a difficult conversation? Is I can have the open conversation with them. I will listen to what they have to say. And then what's important, when that conversation is over, I don't go tell my entire staff what happened.
Yeah.
I don't go talk on the hallways, right? I have to
Yeah.
build trust with that individual. And if I have that trust, they're going to open up and tell me how they feel and what needs to happen. I have to live my values. And then they have to really feel like I want to add value to them. And it really is, they're going to watch what I say. They're going to watch what I don't say.
Yeah.
They're going to watch if I have eye contact with them. They're going to watch me just as much as I'm watching them. And I have to build that trust. And they really have to feel safe in that environment.
Yeah. Well, Art, over the years, you've taught me the answer to this following question. You mentioned it a little earlier in the broadcast, but this one's really stuck with me, and that is, what is the ultimate goal for having a difficult conversation?
Well, as I said, the goal is to restore the relationship to what it once was, or to create a desired relationship. So if you have a new employee that you haven't had time to get to know and develop
Right.
and mentor, then it's all about what type of relationship do you want to have, versus getting that relationship back to what it once was. And the goal is not to debate or convince someone that they might be wrong. When leaders get into debates, nobody's going to leave the room feeling good.
Right.
When leaders get into the command and says, you're going to do this because I said you're going to do it,
Yeah.
it's not going to end
Yeah.
positive. All right, and everybody's going to go away frustrated. So
Right.
it really gets down to entering the conversation with that right motive, and having the other person feel safe enough in that conversation and have them feel like you really care. Do they really feel that you care?
Yeah.
And if you had a great relationship with a person and the performance has gone down, then you can talk about, hey, this is what it used to be like, and this is the behavior I've seen you really excel at. Help me understand why you're having a difficult time with that, and then sit back and listen to what they have to say.
Yeah. So how do you know when the situation's not going to improve and when the individual, isn't going to do any better? Are there certain signals you pick up?
Well, a lot of people, you can watch people. Are they engaged? Do they have eye contact? Are they listening to you, or are they just looking down at the table? How do they respond to what you have to say?
Yeah.
What is the response? Is the response filled with emotions? Then you've got to get through the emotional side and get people to calm down. A lot of people will deal with those old files from old companies, and if they've come from a company where, if you have a situation like this and they've been fired, leaders won't put up with it, you do what I say or I'm going to fire you.
Yeah.
They're going to bring that file in, and you have to get through that file before you get them to the point where they're listening. So
Yeah.
but here's a couple of things that I like to do. I go through my 6 steps, and we'll cover those 6 steps here in a minute. But I also, before I have the conversation, I look at the person and go, are they able to do what we're asking them to do? And most of the time they are.
Interesting.
And then, are they willing to do
Yeah.
what we want them to do?
Yeah.
So if you've got someone who's able and willing, they're in a teachable mode. You can teach them, you can mentor them, they're going to help, and they'll take what you have to say and make it better. But now go through all the other combinations. If you have someone who's not able but willing, now do you have time to train them in getting them to the point where they're able to do what you want them to do? The spirit's there, the heart's there.
Yeah.
Now are they teachable to be able to get there? If you have someone who is able but not willing, you got someone who can do what you're asking them to do, but they're not willing to do it. Can you get them over that hump, or are you just going to go up against a brick wall? And sometimes you run up against a brick wall, and you're not going to get there. And then the last one, if you have someone who is not able and not willing, so they strike out on both fronts, now you've got to sit back and go, okay, you can share them with the competition.
Yeah.
You can help them find an organization where they'll be happy and fit in.
Right.
But they're not going to fit in your organization, because if you're not able and not willing, hey, we have to see a desire to get better when we work with people. And you know what? Most of the people are going to respond great to feeling that they're cared about.
Right.
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 Those that have had a life where they haven't felt that in the companies they've worked for, it's going to be difficult to get them over that hump. And you have to make a decision as a leader. How long am I willing to invest in that person? Am I willing to invest 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 days? So you have to invest how much time you want to put into it. And if they're willing to accept that, you're in a good position, because you're going to be able to make some progress with them.
Yeah. Which really leads into our next question. what if the person really does have bad intentions? I mean, we know from experience that there are some folks, unfortunately, that have bad intent.
They do, and it's time to make a change. Now, I will warn people: just go out. Don't go out and put everybody in a bullying category and say, "Hey, I'm going to fire you all." We live in an environment today where emotions run high in a lot of things, and you have to let those emotions calm down. And especially in election year, where a lot of people are just not listening to what everybody has to say. And there's a lot of emotions in things. So make sure that there aren't emotions in it. But if you find after a while that you find that deep down inside that person really doesn't want to be part of the organization or doesn't want to help an organization be successful in that organization, then you have to make the decision to say, hey, I've got to do something different here. Now, a lot of us get into situations, especially for you guys out there that are small companies. We have a person in a position. We don't have a backup person. Right? We don't have another person that can step in tomorrow and do that. So we have to come up with those creative ways to go, okay, how do I transition this person out while I still go and look and see how I can fill and have someone step into this role. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that, and it all depends on the organization. But a lot of us don't have backups in positions. So you have to think about what's best for the organization for the short term while you're dealing with this situation. Some of the leaders that we deal with, they once they've made up in their mind, they want to make the decision and move on. We just want to make the decision and move on. And it's easier to make that decision and move on than it is to deal with it over a short-term period. I'll put up with the pain of jumping in and maybe helping out in a different role, or find someone that can jump in and help a role, or hire temporary. I can put up with that pain, but the pain of having that person around in the organization and the pain that they're inflicting on the organization is too great. And you got to make that decision.
that they're doing. And I think a lot of leaders don't consider that, the damage that's being done by that person, and their bad intent. So it really is something that you definitely need to pay attention to.
There are a lot of things, Carol, that in early my career that were acceptable in the workplace. My first controller job, you were allowed to smoke anywhere in the building you wanted to. You could smoke out, you could you could go out and drink at lunchtime. You could do a whole bunch of stuff. You could say things that you can't say today. So the times have changed, and bullying falls in that category where things that were acceptable 25, 30 years ago are no longer acceptable. We're smarter. We have a lot more emotional intelligence than we did 30 years ago. So there's certain things that we say, this is not acceptable in our organization. And so bullying, one story I'll share with you real quick is I was taught early in my career that when you want to get your group's attention when they're not really performing the way they want to, that sometimes you have to throw a stapler down on the table or get up out of the room and slam a door or leave a meeting. And that got people's attention. Go, wow, Art's,
they're serious.
Yeah, something going on. We better get our act together. You do that today, that's not appropriate today. And so the one thing about bullying that I've learned in the last, 10 years is, when we show emotions against an object, like a stapler or a phone, slamming a phone, etc., that anger is one step away from danger. Is one letter away from danger. So put a D in front of your anger. You're now on the edge of being a dangerous person. So keep that in mind too when you're dealing with people who are in that bullying situation. Yeah. Little side note for leaders.
So here's a favorite question of mine. Sometimes as leaders we all get frustrated. It's hard to be a servant leader. It is not, the easiest thing to do. So why can't I just tell my team what to do?
I love the graphic that we came up with for this. It's a puppet. And do you really want puppets in your organization? Now, some leaders will say, yes, they do. I just want people to do what I tell them to do, right? And we all go through that. There's days when I just say, I just wish people
so much easier.
Do what I need you to do, right? And but we could do that. I've seen how organizations turn out when you have command and control leaders that they don't use the knowledge that people have. And think about that. If you tell people what to do all the time, you've hired some smart people.
Mm-hmm.
You've hired those people and you're paying them a fair wage. And in some instances, we pay above a fair wage. Isn't it our responsibility to utilize the knowledge that's in our company rather than stifle it?
Yeah.
And if you want a puppet, then don't hire the people with the knowledge.
Go down to the toy store?
Yeah, do something different.
Yeah.
And so it's I really don't want a company of puppets. I really don't want people on my staff that just tell me yes.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get better that way.
Yeah.
Leaders need to have someone who say, you know what, Art, you need to think about this a little bit differently because the way you're approaching it isn't right. And so I need that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
People need to feel like they can use their knowledge. When
Mm-hmm.
people succeed,
Right.
man, they're feeling good because the knowledge they've learned, they're able to put it to work.
Yeah.
And when people can use the knowledge they have and make decisions in organizations, it's great. I'll always remember what Ken Blanchard told me one day. He said, Art, it isn't what your team does when you're around, it's what your team does when you're not around. So ask yourself as a leader, how does my team act when I'm not around?
Yeah.
Does my phone ring every 5 minutes because I'm so important to the organization that nobody can make a decision without me? I don't go around with an earphone in my ear,
Right.
hooked to my phone because I don't have that desire to go make all those decisions. I want people to make those decisions when I'm not around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very fortunate. Today I'm over at servant leadership. I'm away from the radio business. I will not get a phone call today unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And that's the way I like it. I have very smart people running that company. Go take care of business. You don't need to come to me on every decision
Mm-hmm.
that's made. So, do you want puppets or do you want performers? Is really what it boils down to. Yeah. And use the knowledge that's there. Our job as leaders is to really, really use the knowledge that's in front of us that we have in people.
Yeah.
Cut it loose and watch it go, and you will be amazed.
Yeah. Great.
Amazed.
So next, we're going to talk about the steps to having a difficult conversation, and this is going to be at a very high level. So not the intimate details of how to have that conversation, but a more general overview. And can you take us through these, Art?
Sure. These are the steps that I go through, the 6 steps I go through, and I'll when I know I have a conversation I have to go through, I'll spend some time just myself going through these.
Mm-hmm.
I'll write them down, leave some room for my responses. First, I want to clarify the relationship that you wish to have. Describe what it looks like to yourself. What was the relationship like before you had an issue?
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's a new person, what do you really want to get out of that relationship? How do you want that person to perform, especially if they're a leader?
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I always talk about the company values, what our mission and our purpose is. Make sure we understand the priorities of the values, priorities in the company. Make sure the individual understands what really is not up for discussion, right? Third one is to listen to what other people have to say. This is really, really important.
Is that important?
Because in a tough situation, difficult,
Yeah.
there's 2 sides to the story,
Sure.
right? And you may not have all the information as a leader. And that's one thing I had to listen to my team a lot about was, Art, you're jumping into things to fix things, but you don't have 100% of the information. So you have to take time to listen to what people have to say. Maybe there's something you misunderstood. Maybe there's something that you don't have in front of you. Maybe there is some information you need. So take the time to listen about, hey, this is why I did what I did.
Yeah.
These were the circumstances, and it may change what you do a little bit further down the conversation. Right. Next one, you have to give clear examples of the behavior that was, number 1, incorrect, and number 2, this is the behavior I'd like you to have.
Right.
Now,
So combination of both.
Combination, and that's tough because you're telling someone you did this wrong.
Yeah.
Right. This is where you get into tough, where this is what you did wrong, and according to our values and our mission and purpose, this is how I need you to operate in those situations.
And you said something really key there that I picked up on. It against our mission and our values and our purpose. So it isn't, here's what Art says. It's, we need you to perform to our mission and our values and our purpose. So it takes it out of your court.
Right.
And we need to strive to meet something that is higher, that's true for that company, whether you're there or not.
In all of my companies, I really hate the term, we did it because Art said we had to do it. And when leaders want to use my name, use it correctly. All right? And what I mean by that is I may have said that 7 years ago or 8 years ago, but times are different today. And so if you're going to use my name, at least update it to today's standards, right? Before you throw it around. But I really don't like people using my name to get things done.
As a weapon. As
a weapon. It really doesn't make a great example for people. So stick to your values, stick to your mission and purpose, have people behave under that. Get away from the environment where they throw around the leader's name to get things done, right? Yeah. Explain the consequences. Here's what will happen if I can't get you to change. Most companies will have a process you go through with HR. You may create a development plan. You may do a written warning. There may be some other things. But within whatever your company does, make sure that you explain the consequences. If I can't get you to change this, here's the challenges we're going to have. And here's the issues we're going to do and the steps we're going to have to take, right?
And hopefully, I mean, I think the whole point of what we're trying to get across is have that conversation before it gets to the point that you have to write somebody up.
Yes.
Or, it's down the hall to HR.
Yep.
Or it's out the front door.
Invest your time in your people. If you invest your time in people, guess what? You're not going to have very many of those conversations.
Right.
They're not going to go away, but they're not going to be a common thing that you're going to have to deal with every week, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Talk about the time frame for the improvement. You have to say, here's what I want you to improve. Here's the time frame in which I want to do it. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? And I'll caution leaders, depending on what's going on with the individual, you're gonna hear some of the if there's emotions to it, there may be some other reasons that they're still learning how to operate within the company. Take that into consideration when you set down a time frame. Don't arbitrarily say everybody's got to change in a week. We're talking about behaviors.
Yeah.
Behaviors don't change in a week. Behaviors don't ever have to change in 30 days.
Right.
Now, on the flip side of that coin is you can't have people violating your values with your customers. So that gets back to explain what's not up for discussion. I can't have my customers impacted because you don't want to follow our values.
Right.
And I'm not going to put up with that. So, and you can do that in a very positive way. Yeah.
And the other thing I would add to that, Art, is, don't have this conversation and set up these kind of parameters with somebody, and then that's it. When they walk out the door, you expect them to do it, and now you've done your duty. You've got to check in with those people, see how things are going. You can't just go bye-bye.
Yeah, you can't. So you got to invest some time.
Yeah.
You have to invest.
Yeah.
And you can't get around that. Like I said, we're dealing with behaviors. They're not going to change overnight. Just look at yourself. I can't change a behavior overnight.
Right.
I may say tomorrow I'm going to be different. The next day I'm going to be successful. And then the third day I go, this isn't working. I'm out of here. Right? I'm. It's kind of worked with diets. And we say we're not going to, go down and
hit the candy machine.
Yeah, hit the candy machine, and we do great for 5 days, and then we got a little stress in our life. We're going, I need that M&M. Got to go have it. Got to go have it. Yeah.
You're singing my song.
Yep.
Important one here.
This is the most important thing you can do. At the end of the conversation, talk about all the positive contributions that individual has brought into the company. If they're new to the company, remind them, I hired you because of this knowledge. I hired you because of this experience. I believe that you can be successful and be a big part of this team. I believe that you're going to add a lot of value to us. Help me help you realize what I believe you can do. And then when someone's been around with you for a while and you go, now, you're a great example, right? A month ago would not be the time for me to sit down and talk about your performance.
No, probably
Okay.
not.
So I could go down to the hospital, spend a little time with you, have a cup of coffee, and go, hey, Carol, hey, while we're talking here, and you're in the hospital and your son's upstairs, how about we talk about your performance? Not a good idea. Okay, you got to pick the right time. But you have to talk about everything the person brings to the table. Carol, here's what you've done here. Here's what you've done here. You did a great job for me here. You did a great job for me here. Pull those positive things out and put them on the table for the employee to hear, because they will now take that and go, you know what? I feel like I just kind of went through the ringer with Art, but he told me all the good things that I did. Now I really feel good about that, because you're right. I did this right. I did this right. I did this right. They may even pop in and go, hey, what about this, this, and this? That's even better. Get them engaged in that. They will believe in themselves if you finish that conversation with a positive feedback.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. Please don't forget that, because if you want to get someone's opinion, or you want to get someone to change, this is one of the best ways to do this, is tell them what they're doing right.
Yeah,
right?
Sounds good.
Yeah, as Ken, I love Ken, but he wrote a book called Whale Done, with a whale in his front. Whale done. This is a great time to tell people, good job, you did this great, did this great, did this great. I just need you to change in this area, right? Yeah.
I want to take a moment and just remind everyone out there that you can enter your questions at any time, and we'll be going to questions fairly soon now. Final point on this.
Can I?
Go ahead. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to leave everybody with this before we get into the next item. Is every time I've sat down and gone through these 6 steps and planned out what I was going to say, what I wanted them to change, and then listed all the things that they did really well. Every time I've gone through that, I've had 100% success with people reacting positively.
Great.
Those people who aren't able and aren't willing, different story, because they're not going to listen to anything you have to say.
Yeah.
They don't want to listen.
Right.
You could go through those 6 steps 10 times. They're still not going to listen. So you've got that in the spectrum. But I will tell you, 99% of the time, you're going to have success if you sit down and go through this. I find when I have the emotions in place and I don't want to take the time to do this, I want to react emotionally as a leader. That's when I get in trouble, because I forgot step 3, 4, and 5. I forgot those steps.
Yeah.
They are very important. And if you skip them and go, hey, Carol, you're great, but you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and you need to change it, and I need you to change by next week. Got any questions? Nope. Great, we're done.
Probably won't work out.
Yeah. So anyway, my experience has been this has worked really, really well for me. Yeah.
So that being said, can we highlight for folks what steps are taken that, again, this issue of let's set the process apart, what makes servant leadership different than any other approach?
I love this 4-letter word, a mindset and an attitude of love. It's a 4-letter word, and leaders don't want to use that. But you have to care for the people that you are responsible for. And when you do that, they're going to see it great. And the mindset you have to follow it up with your attitude and your behaviors. Clarify the relationship you want to have. Either get it back on track, or hey, this is a relationship I want to generate with new employees. Make sure you talk about discussing the company values, the mission, the purpose. If there's behaviors you need to change, make sure that you get those behaviors down.
Yeah.
Make sure there's a time frame to them, and schedule some follow-up, discussions. See how they were doing, and then always talk about their positive contributions. The first one with the mindset and attitude of love, and the last one talking about their positive contributions, that will set you apart as a servant leader, because power leaders will not do those 2 steps.
Yeah.
You start with a great mindset and a love and a care for people. You end it with telling them everything they've done well. Guess what? You've now set yourself up as a different type of leader that people can trust and rely on.
And that's a relationship.
And that's a relationship. That's exactly right. That's a relationship.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
So we have a special offer for our audience today. If you'd like to have a detailed process outline for planning and executing a difficult conversation, we have that available. send us an email to info@servantleadershipinstitute.com and we'll send you out the document. Well, thanks, Art. We're going to go to some questions from
Great.
our audience now.
Great. Yep, let's do it.
And let's see, number 1 here. What can I do daily to have the mindset of a servant leader? From listening to you today, I think it'll really help me handle some difficult conversations with my staff. So what can this person do on a daily basis to have that mindset?
If you've ever heard me talk about my 9 behaviors, and I talk about this all the time, but this is what I do. My routine from the time I get up in the morning to the time I get to work and upstairs, I've picked that routine to remind me of my values. So I serve first. I make coffee for Lori, my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I get in the car. I drive past the bus station. It reminds me to build trust. I then get on the freeway. I have to live my values to get on the freeway out here in California, okay? Once I'm on the freeway, I get on my cell phone and talk to some people on the East Coast. I really have to listen to understand. That cell phone reminds me to listen to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have some time to myself to think between I get off the phone and to work. I have some time to think about my thinking. When I get to work, the front door of my work reminds me to add value to someone. And if you really want to have a different mindset, every day when you walk through that door to your work, ask yourself, who am I going to add value to today?
Yeah.
Who will I add value? And put a name to it. Sally, Joe, Tom, whatever the name is. Say, I'm going to add value to Tom today. That will help you keep that mindset going, right? And be courageous in those conversations. You know, people that aren't performing, don't put it off because it hurts both of you.
Right.
Go have that
Just
difficult
gets worse.
conversation. And then I think about increasing my influence and then how do I live my transformations. But those physical things I do every day, that's how I remind myself. And that front door, as a leader, check your ego at the door. Check your ego at the door and ask yourself, who am I going to serve today? Who am I going to add value to on that day? And your mindset will change a little bit over time. And you'll get it. Now, we're going to have situations during the day that will take us right out of that.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. Don't get uptight because your mindset didn't change and stay the same all day long. That's okay. But just take things that are around you every day. If it's a cubicle that you have to walk by, someone you have to walk by, maybe you have to walk by a coffee pot or a reception, whatever you need to do to remind yourself to, who am I going to serve today? Pick that physical thing up that you walk by every day and put that behavior on that thing, and that's your reminder, and that's your visualization of how you're going to do that, right? And that will help you make sure you have a great mindset. So, great question,
Great.
and thank you for the comment. I hope it helps with the difficult conversations.
Yeah. So here's our next question. This is a very interesting one. How can I bring out quiet employees that don't say much during a difficult conversation, even when I have a kind tone with them?
Those can be difficult. I would suggest that maybe you reorder the priorities of the 6 steps. Start with asking them questions. Here's what I'm here to talk about. Do you have any concerns? Or do you have any concerns being here? This is what we're going to talk about. Do you have any questions about what we're going to do? Try and engage them with questions. And as you go through the 6 steps, if they say something, you say, help me understand that. Tell me some more about that. Because I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Tell me some more. Tell me some more. What did you mean by this? What did you mean by that? And get them engaged and talking. If you just keep asking questions, hopefully they'll get on board with it. If they're just very quiet, then you have to go, I'm not creating a safe environment for them.
Yeah.
And that safe environment, maybe you need to leave your office and go to the lunchroom. Maybe you need to go to, if you have a collaborative area, go sit in a couple chairs in the collaborative area and just sit and talk over a cup of coffee. Maybe you need to create that environment that's outside your office or outside your conference room.
That's a really, really great idea, because it seems there may not be a strong enough trust there,
right,
for people to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've hit a really good point there to get change the environment a little bit,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll see some success there.
When I was worked at Disney, and I was assistant supervisor, we were allowed to go out in the park and do our reviews in the park. So
Oh, cool.
we'd leave the office and we walk out to Main Street and
Yeah.
find ourselves a bench, and we talk about the review. And that helped so much because you got out of the office, you walked with the person, you talked with the person, you went out to the happiest place on earth, right? And I mean, how can you get upset with each other when you're sitting on Main Street, USA?
Yeah,
Create your own
exactly.
Main Street, USA, your own Disneyland where people feel comfortable and will open up and talk to you.
Yeah, great. Before we go any further with some more questions, I just want to repeat our email address for those of you who would like the detailed document pertaining to difficult conversations, and that is info@servantleadershipinstitute.com. Okay, next question. Do you ever go a level down or include their boss in a meeting to mentor a supervisor?
I do go down in levels. The values, the mission and purpose of the organization is the leader's is my responsibility.
Right.
As a CEO. And so I take that very seriously. So if I do go down and mentor a supervisor, I will normally talk with HR first and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. This is a situation. Give them a chance to mentor me as a leader and say, hey, did you think about this? Did you think about this?
Right.
Once I feel comfortable about that, that's what I'm going to do. I'll bring their leader in and sit down and talk to them and say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the reason why. Do you have any questions?
Right.
And then I'll go mentor that supervisor.
Okay.
So I have to do a couple of steps there.
Yeah, so let me just clarify this. This is the instance where you are not mentoring or having the difficult conversation with your direct report. You are going a level beyond that.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So everybody knows that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So everybody's aware of that. When a supervisor comes to me and says, Art, I need some mentoring, I need some discussion, I'm not getting what I need from my manager, I don't even start listening to him. I say, does your boss know you're here? Mm-hmm. And the answer is
Right,
no. Right. I do my mentoring and say, respect your boss enough to go let him know that you're here, him or her, or her. Let them know that you're coming in to talk to me.
Right.
They'll be okay with it in our environment. They'll be okay with it. But respect them enough to tell them that that's what you're doing. Sometimes that conversation with me will never take place because people just want to come in and get stuff off their chest
yes.
and do
I've
that
had
kind of
that
neat
situation.
stuff. So so it helps you avoid a lot of those situations. But people who have something that's really on their mind or on their heart, they'll take that step and then they'll come back and talk to you. And so just make sure you respect everybody that's in that line.
Right.
But when it comes to values, mission, and purpose, that is my responsibility as CEO to make sure that stays intact throughout the organization. Right. Yeah.
Great. Okay, next question. It sounds like being loving is a good thing as a leader. I was always taught the opposite. Somebody after your own heart here. Do you think I can change after all these years of leading more with power?
Well, I will tell you, my change into servant leadership started in the late 40s, early 50s. And I've been in the power model since I was 22. So 22 to 52, that's 30 years. And I will tell you just what Lori tells me. She was very, very thankful to some of my mentors and thanked them personally for changing my life. She saw a big change. And you can change. Don't give up on yourself. I was taught early in my career that you have relationships with the people above you and you do not have relationships with the people below you. I was actually told that by an officer in a company. Says you do not have relationships with your people. All right, you don't talk to them, you don't help them. You have those relationships with the people above you. In other words, you were serving everybody above you. You weren't serving the people below you.
Right.
The gentleman who told me that was a gentleman who was more concerned about the car he drove, more concerned about how he looked in his, expensive suit. when he joined our company, he bought a bunch of wood furniture, and we were a small company at that time. I think he spent like 30 grand on furniture for his office, and you go, this is all about him. It's all about him. But you can change. Don't think that you can't change. It's not too late. I've seen people go 30, 40 years, and they get this. They understand that they need to change. Change for the people around you that love you the most, because they're the ones that are gonna see the biggest change in who you are and what you do. And that is worth every second of every effort that you're going to make to change as an individual. So if I encourage you, go start doing it for the people you love, and then you'll start letting that overflow into people that you really care for at work, and you will be amazed at what you can do as an individual. You will be amazed. So I encourage you to keep it going. If I can help you in any way with that, let the team know here. I'll be more than happy to talk to you one-on-one. But yeah, just keep going.
And I'd just like to add to that and really compliment you and the other listeners, because the very fact that you are listening to this webinar today is proof that you can change, that you do feel it's valuable, and believe it or not, you are getting started on your own servant leadership journey. And so I really, really want to, as Art said, encourage you and compliment you for doing that. And it happens in small ways sometimes, and sometimes it happens in big ways. But you're on the right track, so that's wonderful. I also want to remind folks that we will have the recording of today's webinar posted on our website tomorrow morning, so you can be on the lookout for that. Those were awesome questions from our listeners. Thank you so much. We have 2 exciting events coming up for you. First of all is our half-day servant leadership workshop taking place on October 14th at Concordia University in Irvine. We're honored to present our own Art Barter, along with Stephen M. R. Covey, speaking on servant leadership at the speed of trust. Great speakers, an interactive session, and a beautiful venue. You don't want to miss it. So go to our website, www.servantleadershipinstitute.com, and click the register button.
Yeah, get on. I was on the phone with Stephen just 2 days ago, and he is so excited about this event. We did an event with him in August out in Las Vegas, and we had a great time together. He is so excited about this event. We're excited about it. It's just filling up really fast. So if you have any inclination of wanting to join us, get in there. We have a private breakfast you can come to. I will personally introduce you to Stephen, let you talk to him, meet me personally, Great. Spend a little time with us in a little smaller setting, which is really exciting. So we're excited about it. We got some neat people coming to join us, both from Orange County and San Diego County. So we're gonna have a great time. Great time.
And it's also time to register for, once again, seems like only yesterday, our Servant Leadership Conference for 2017, which will be taking place on March 13th and 14th at the Marriott Marquis San Diego Marina. We've got some surprises up our sleeve this year, so you're not going to want to miss this premier event in the servant leadership community. And again, you can register now at www.servantleadershipinstitute.com.
It's going to be a fun event. You guys, we're going to do something we've never done before, so that's all we can tell you right now. But we're going to be back over on the other side of the bay this year in downtown San Diego, near the Gaslamp District in the beautiful Marriott Marquis.
Completely refurbished inside.
Refurbished everything. Yeah. We are so excited about the event and what we're going to do with you guys. So we're looking forward to serving you guys next year in March. So.
And before we close today, here's some ways you can get involved with SLI. Our webinar program will continue, so be on the lookout for those notifications. We also have our podcasts, and those are on iTunes. Just search for the Servant Leadership Institute podcast. And we'd love for you to get involved with us on social media, so please follow us. Art, any thoughts you'd like to leave us with as we close today's webinar?
Well, these difficult conversations, you have to be courageous. And I know that everyone that's listening out there, as Carol said, you've taken a great step in listening to us today. you've already taken a step towards being courageous with those difficult conversations. I encourage you, pour love into people that you're responsible for. Invest in their lives. Do the same with those that you love the most that are around you.
Yeah.
And your life will change in ways that you won't even understand. And it's well worth the journey. So take the step, have those courageous conversations, those difficult conversations, and pour some love in people. And make sure to take that ego out and leave it in the car when you go into work in the morning. Yep.
I can't say anything better than that. So this is the Servant Leadership Institute signing off. Thanks so much for listening.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.